Welcome back to Ag Enterprise Management. I'm your lecturer, Matthew Johnson. If you haven't done so already, make sure you check out the course website and the syllabus to see all the other modules in this course. In this module, we're going to be going over other regulations and insurances. So overview of the module, we're going to be going over the basics of land classifications, environmental regulations, various certifications, and licenses for your ag operation. Our objectives are going to be understand land use and zoning, also understanding environmental regulations that impact local agriculture and the agencies that manage these. Also know the licenses and certifications that are needed. We're also going to learn about organic farming and that certification process, and also going over the basics of general liability insurance. So the state has 4 major land use classifications that the various land properties are divided into. We have urban, conservation, rural, and agriculture. Here we have a map of Oahu that shows the breakdown of the different land classifications. As you can see, typically the mountain areas with the steeper slopes are typically going to be automatically put into conservation, so meaning there's no land development that's able to happen in those areas. And then in the red areas, we have what is the urban areas. You can see Honolulu down there, mostly in the bottom right hand corner, south side, making our way up to Pearl City, out to Kapolei, and then various other districts around the island. So for agriculture, you can see it's primarily clustered in the central Oahu belt, going up through Kunia, Malilani, and then up on the north shore, Haleiwa, and then over towards Kahuku. And then we see some patches as well over on the windward side, mostly in the Waimanalo area. So when you're looking at property, so that's obviously a big part of being able to farm. You need to have farmland that you can actually operate on. Right? So obviously it makes sense that you need to understand what is the zoning of the land that you're looking at. Is it permitted to have agriculture practices on there? So if land is actually zoned rural or urban, it really is going to limit the amount of agriculture activities that you may have on that property, if any at all. And then also with a different type of zoning regulations, so this is typically managed by the City and County of Honolulu Department of Planning and Permitting. They have a whole list of regulations of what you can and cannot do on that particular type of land. So this entails the type of building structures that you can put up, type of berms or other land moving. If there's going to be any grading and grubbing, which you're going to be doing, you need to have permits allowing you to do that. So just because you get onto a piece of land, you really have to understand what you can and cannot do. So if your whole idea is to build a large packaging or processing facility, but for some reason after you get on the land you find out that it's not permitted, it's not allowed because of the type of land or previous regulations on that property, it could really mess up your operation. So if land is zoned for agriculture, typically these are the type of activities you can do. Farm dwellings, okay, so this is there's restrictions on the type of farm dwellings that you can have. So farm dwelling meaning places to operate or even places to live. So the number of structures is limited, the size of the structures are limited. And this is kind of coming back from some issues in the past with we call it kind of like ag mansions, gentlemen's estates, where people are purchasing ag land with really just the intent of putting a couple of fruit trees and then a large, nice residential home to live on. So there's been a lot of challenges in the past of how to regulate that. Also here to talk about group living facilities. So this is a big issue for local agriculture, is having farm worker housing. So that's something that is a lot of regulation, a lot of challenges to be able to get the kind of permitting you would need to be able to do that. Agribusiness activities, right? So you're still limited on the type of agriculture you're allowed to do, and then also if you're going to be trying to sell from the property, there's a whole other set of regulations and limitations that may apply. For example, I know Cuckoo Farms, who has the farm cafe up on the North Shore, they had a lot of challenges with permitting because their land that they were on was allowed for agricultural production, but it wasn't necessarily allowing them to do sales and have a restaurant cafe on the property. So that took a lot of work for them, of working with the city and county Department of Planning and Permitting and also the state to be able to get the right permits that they needed. Then same thing for agricultural processing. Like for us at the Oahu Food Hub, we were required to work with the Department of Health to get our commercial kitchen permit to be able to operate the facility from there. And then also we have for storage and distribution of agricultural products, crop production, forestry, roadside stands, as we already mentioned, and then also aquaculture. So we're going to be working with aquaculture. There's a lot of other regulations you have to deal with, particularly going to be on the Department of Health side of things, to make sure that you are in compliance with the state and county laws for that. One of the specific certifications that farms need to be aware of, especially if you're going to be spraying different types of either fertilizers or pesticides, is a pesticide applicator certification. So this is coming directly from Hawaii Department of Agriculture. This requires that anyone who's going to be spraying different commercial products need to make sure that they're following the laws with that. So make sure that not doing any environmental damage to the land, but also making sure that employees and also employers, but also nearby neighbors are not going to be getting sick from improper application of various sprays of pesticides or fertilizers. There's been some stories in the past of schools on Kauai supposedly having to vacate the school because of pesticide spray drift from ag lands that were adjacent to the school, and then the students started getting sick. So this is very important and a big deal to make sure that if you are going to be spraying different types of pesticides and fertilizers, that's being done properly and that it is certified by the Department of Agriculture. All right, so typically for other environmental regulations, I'm going to be working with the Hawaii Department of Health. All right, so their main responsibility is ensuring clean air and water, also making sure that solid and hazardous waste is being managed properly, and they also deal with any food and drug regulations. So if you're going to be farming, some of the activities that you may have to go to Department of Health for permission for may be if you're discharging pollutants into the water. This was an issue for the Big Island Dairy over on the Hilo side of Big Island, where they started getting into a lot of trouble, where they had a lot of runoff from their dairy cow operation that was running off into the local streams there. So they had to work with the Hawaii Department of Health to get their activities back up to par. Burning green waste. Okay, so at some points this is allowed. So if you have a large amount of brush or an area that you want to burn for various reasons, like for example, the sugar industry used to do this as a way to manage their sugar fields. So this is allowed in certain instances, but have to work with the Department of Health to get the allowed permit and make sure that it's done in a proper manner. If you're going to be transporting or handling any hazardous waste, so this could be a range of effluent, leftover pesticide containers, a variety of different things. You have to work with the Department of Health on being allowed to do this. And we also kind of mentioned too, operating a food establishment. So if you're going to be doing any kind of food processing, this is where you need to have your commercial kitchen certification. That's where you work with Department of Health on getting those permits. Another state agency that typically work closely with, makes a lot of sense, is the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. And so, as we already mentioned, Department of Agriculture regulates pesticide application, ensuring pesticides are applied in accordance with their label and that they're not harming the environment. Hawaii Department of Agriculture also administers programs for ag development. So they have a marketing department, they have different grant programs, really trying to support the local ag community as much as possible. They also provide loans, and they also control the import and export of plants and animals. So anytime that you might be trying to bring in a new crop into Hawaii, you have to work with Department of Agriculture to get the proper permits to be allowed to do that. And then same thing as well, if you're going to be exporting a product out of Hawaii, you would also be working with Hawaii Department of Agriculture. All right, some just basic common sense tips for working with regulatory agencies. And just like anywhere else, you want to develop a good relationship with regulating agencies. All right, so for example, at the food hub for the commercial kitchen process, we want to make sure that we're on really good terms with the Department of Health agent who comes out to certify our kitchen space. Because if we didn't have a good relationship, this person could shut down our operation, and that would have serious consequences. Be proactive. So basically, this means is doing the research, understanding what are the different issues that you should be aware of. Having a regulatory agent come out to your operation and telling you that you're doing something wrong and that you have no idea is really not a good way to operate. You really need to be aware of the different rules and regulations and ask ahead of time. And maybe you think there's nothing wrong, but checking in with Department of Ag or Department of Health ahead of time is a good way to operate. So, and then just following up with that, know the rules and then follow them to the best of your ability. And then a lot of times with these different types of regulations or certifications, it really is keeping documentation. So whatever reports, or you need people to fill out different things, make sure you do that as well. Another certification that farms can apply for is organic farming. This is pretty well known, and here we have the organic certification logo that is from the United States Department of Agriculture. So this is, so considering whether you want to use organic practices on the farm. All right, so this is limits the types of sprays, fertilizers that you can use. They have to be certified organic sprays, inputs for the farm. And it also means that you have to be certified and meet all the regulations set by the National Organic Program. So this is a pretty big thing for a farm to do. It requires a lot of paperwork, a lot of documentation, and also obviously you have to be using the organic practices. So a lot of farms, especially here in Hawaii, are using organic practices but aren't necessarily certified organic because there is a cost associated with it and it is a lot of work. but being able to use the word organic and also have the USDA organic logo can be a really good marketing tool. There's a lot more demand now in the market for certified organic products, and it's a decision that the farm wants to take a look into and follow through and see if that's something they want to do. Some other certifications. So there really is certifications for all kinds of things. These are some of the more popular ones. There's the non-GMO project. So this is a way to be able to get your products certified as non-genetically modified organism. So a lot of products, especially like products like corn or papaya, ones that are heavily being used, GMO varieties. This is a good thing that you could do to get for the farm. So once again, it's going to require documentation and verifying that the seed source and also the growing practices meet the requirements for the non-GMO project. It's also certified gluten-free, so that's another rising trend in the market. More and more people are looking for non-gluten products. So this would also require that documentation that all of your ingredients are gluten-free, and then also the facility that you're going to be operating in, if you're going to be doing processing, has to be a certified gluten-free facility. Like for example, with the commercial kitchen that we have at the Wahoo Food Hub, the kitchens that we have right now would not be able to be certified gluten-free because we have a variety of different products going in and out of there. So we would have to take a specific kitchen and make sure that no non-gluten-free products are going into the kitchen. So it's all part of a process, and having the documentation and making sure that you're following through with making sure that there's no gluten being mixed into any of the products. And you also have the Food Alliance certified certification as well, and this is basically saying that more supporting sustainable farming throughout the country. All right, so talk a little bit about insurance. So everyone's probably familiar with car insurance, maybe renter's insurance. So there's a variety of insurances for all kinds of things. And typically when you're starting up a business, the most common, most needed form of insurance, other than any kind of vehicle insurance or property insurance, is what's called general liability insurance. So 9 times out of 10, as a small business or any kind of business, you're going to be looking to reach out to insurance agents to be able to provide you with this kind of insurance. Right? So this is a broad type of insurance policy, provides liability insurance for general business risks. So if someone gets hurt on your property, or if someone is injured by using a product or service of yours, typically this is the first level of protection that the business would use in these type of instances. So typically, depending on the business and operations, you're required to have a minimum of $1 million general liability insurance policy. So basically what this means is that it protects you up to $1 million in damages. And this is like the typical type of insurance. So for example, if you go to the farmers markets, to be able to operate a farmers market, you need to show that you have a general liability insurance, probably of at least $1 million. Sometimes it may even require more. Just depends on the different type of operations. And same thing too, like when we have people coming to use a commercial kitchen, same thing, we require them to have at least $1 million in general liability insurance coverage. Okay, thank you so much. As always, please check out the course website for any reading and written assignments for this section. Aloha.